Technical Writing for Inspectors, Module 21, Proofreading. Gary A. Pace, P.E., CWI, Katy, Texas, TexasWeldingEngineering.com. Learning objectives, revision strategies, proofreading techniques, things to check when proofreading, third-party review, reorganizing, cutting for length, and checking for consistency. All right, so revision and proofreading strategies. Let's start. When you write something, you're going to have to revise it and proofread it, and proofread it and revise it. Don't revise and proofread right away. Let it sit and marinate for a little bit. I know sometimes you might have to crank out some work, but depending on what it is, you might want to let it sit and walk away. And I've talked about this even during writing of things. Sometimes you just want to walk away from it, come back, and take a look at it. So generally, you don't want to revise and or proofread immediately. Um, Set it aside for a few hours or a small amount of time. Go get a cheeseburger, a soda, or just go for a walk and let your mind wander. Listen to some Guns N' Roses and come back to it. Uh, you know, so by doing this strategy, it gives your brain a chance to rest, and it's not as focused on what it was. And then you can come back and look at what you wrote. And I do this all the time. Most and all writers do. And you come back and you're like, why did I write this garbage? This makes no sense. And you might not have been able to come back at it from that angle if you wouldn't have stepped away. So this allows you to catch your own errors. If you're just staring at it, you won't catch your own errors. You got to come back and read it like it's not yours. Uh, and also don't be afraid to be critical and analytical of your own data, information, and what you've written. I know you've written it and you like it, but it doesn't hurt to be a little bit analytical and critical when you are revising and proofreading and revising your own documents, your technical documents. It needs to be right. So, proofreading techniques, well, sometimes it helps to just read that thing aloud, like you're in the second grade. Read it aloud. And it'll sound different when you read it aloud than when you are reading it just in your head. So it's going to sound different. So this gives you another way to come at it. And it'll help you catch mistakes or maybe clarify what you've read or written. Um, Also, don't be afraid to make a list of mistakes that you commonly make and then keep an eye out for those mistakes. If you always have run-on sentences, well, write run-on sentences in your little cheat sheet, your little list of errors that you might make on a regular basis. This is weird, but read the text backwards. By reading the text backwards, it helps you figure out you're coming at it from a different direction, and your brain will work differently. And then try to only proofread for one type of error at a time. If you're depending on how good of a writer you are, maybe you're only going to have a few things that need to be tweaked. But this is one way to read something and then come at it. And double check everything. Read through everything a couple of times before if it's depending on what level of report it is, because you don't want to send out a crappy report and then have somebody, uh, not send you any more work again because your report was substandard. Read it slowly and carefully when you're grinding through it and you're proofreading it. Some things to check when you're proofreading. Basic spelling and grammar. So this is, English from the third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. Make sure that everything's spelled and the grammar's good. That you don't have anything that's just going to get the grammar police on you. Make sure the verb tenses match up with what you're doing. Don't use the past tense in the future or vice versa. Make sure everything works. Make sure the sentence structure works. I am going to the store. Make sure everything is, you know, that it works. Make sure your formatting is good. Don't have, 5 different types of font in on one page, or don't have your formatting just be a mess. Tighten it up. The spacing, the the types of font in there, the how everything's set back from certain edges. Make sure your formatting is clean and looks good. Consistency. Make sure there's consistency. If you're going to call a widget, don't call it a gizmo another time and, use another word to describe it somewhere else. Be consistent. Consistency when writing is crucial. Check the overall flow of the document. Does this thing flow how I want it to flow? All right, it explains this, 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 and then it goes on to this, and the flow of my document is good. Check the overall flow. All right, get a third party to review um, your document before you. And this isn't a hard and fast rule, depending on what it is. Maybe you're just doing a little report for somebody. All right, but if you're doing something big and super important, and I don't know what parameters you want to attach to big and super important, but I generally get someone else to read and review what I write and have them dig through the grammar and, find any errors, maybe do some fact checking and check the information that I've thrown out there, uh, you know, and make sure it makes sense and it's somewhat accurate. Sometimes you're going to have to reorganize. Sometimes within sections, you know, you're going to start at the end of your paper and read the sections from the back to the front. And this will help you if you start at the back and go to the front. It's going to help you see how it's organized and see if it really flows. Um, and like I said, within sections, you just start in a paragraph and you read it backwards and see if there's any errors, mistakes, or whatever. And then you're going to do the entire paper. You're going to start in the back and read it forward. And you're going to have to develop your own method on this if you choose to adopt it. But in reading these papers backwards, it helps you check the flow. Oh, how did I go from that to this? If you're reading it front of the document to back, you're gonna think it's beautiful. But if you go back to front, it's gonna help you see if there's any errors in there, anything that needs to be rearranged or reorganized. Um, and a lot of people print out a document and then print it out and then do their editing, reorganizing, and proofreading, and then they'll underline or circle any information. It's like, why did I put this in there? This has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So don't be afraid to do that. Print it out and then read the document in that manner. Sometimes we got to cut these things for length. Um, so in doing so, we're going to read the paper backwards to forwards, sentence by sentence, and then we're going to cut out anything that doesn't belong. Why do I got that in there? Maybe there's sentences, maybe there's paragraphs that just don't belong. So then you can, chop anything out that doesn't add value to what we're trying to accomplish. And you don't have to adopt all of these techniques, but these are some of the techniques that are out there and that some people use when, writing and, revising documents. Don't be afraid to rearrange whole sentences so that you can, get it, so that you can get it to, say what you want to say with fewer words. So, but sometimes you just got to cut things out. There might be whole sections you need to that doesn't pertain to what we're talking about. It's easier to cut things out than to add things. So don't be afraid to cut things out. So in checking for consistency, you want to read the whole paper, front to back, checking for cohesion and consistency. Does the paper flow? Is it a cohesive document? We don't start off talking about chocolate cake and then end up talking about killer whales, and there's no transition in there. I don't know how you transition from that to that, but um, so we want to worry about cohesion and consistency. And as I said before, and I think I said it in a previous module, if you call a certain component a widget, call it a widget the whole document. Don't call it a widget in one place and a thingamabob here and a doohickey and a gizmo. Keep the nomenclature or the naming convention solid for that item, for that component. Consistency. And also check and see if there's anything that's mentioned in the abstract or introduction, and then uh, it's only mentioned there and not mentioned in the rest of the paper. Well, cut it out, throw it out, or add it to the paper. All right, we want to add ninjas to our paper, and we were talking about chocolate cake and killer whales. Well, now we're going to add ninjas in there. Well, add ninjas in there if you have to, to get the paper to work. Or just throw everything out about, just nuke everything in there, delete everything about ninjas. So, uh, also, when we're checking for consistency, we want to make sure that the introduction matches the conclusion. The body of the report matches the conclusion and the introduction. Uh, as I've said about our, cake, chocolate cake, and the killer whales. Is there any parts of the report that stick out to us? Why is this in there? Um, this doesn't really flow with the rest of the report, and I don't know why I included it in there. If it doesn't match, don't be afraid to cut it out or rebuild it. So we've talked about revision strategies, proofreading techniques, things to check when proofreading, third party review of your document. Get somebody else to proofread it and uh, you know, give it a sanity check. Reorganizing, we talked about that, cutting for length and checking for consistency. Questions? Gary A. Pace, PE, CWI, Katy, Texas, TexasWeldingEngineering.com. Got any questions or comments? Contact me and I'll try and see what I can do to help you.